Even legends bleed.
Hello everyone, welcome to What If Tomioka Giyuu Was Kitsune's Human and Became Nine-Tailed Demon Slayer movie. Before we start, please go support Elgabo9778 for writing that awesome fanfic. This is the translated version I made. There will be some mistaken character's gender, but of course Giyuu is a male. The Kitsunes, creatures with human appearances but with the difference of having fox-like characteristics, such as ears and tails along with their eyes. These are considered a legend, but with the appearance of the demons, no one loved the Kitsunes anymore. Instead, they were feared, said to bring misfortune to people. That's why there were demon hunters who wiped out the Kitsunes, thinking they were demons. The Kitsune used to bring luck and take care of humans, but by that time everything was going to hell. Chapter 1. Note. I will change the Kitsune stories to make them more understandable. The Kitsunes, supposed spirits or living beings that bring good fortune to people, beings with great wisdom and incredible strength and power. These are also characterized by liking mischief, or rather playing pranks on humans for fun, to the point of destroying some things. Many people think that these are legends meant to be taken in good faith, leading them to believe that the pranks played on them are due to a Kitsune and that everything was peace and harmony. But there's always a but. With the appearance of the demons, many saw what appeared to be a type of human in the form of a fox with fox-like limbs, thinking they were demons fleeing from them out of fear. From that day on, there also existed what became the demon extermination body that wiped out the demons led by the first demon king and the very first demon that appeared. Muzan Kibutsuji, who would be the most powerful demon to have ever existed. But we will not concentrate on him, but on the Kitsunes. These are normally peaceful with all kinds of living beings, but with the sudden contempt that appeared towards them, they were forced to attack humans to protect the female Kitsune and the offspring. Now there are different legends of the Kitsunes, or as they are now called, demons. They say they are terrifying, that they only bring misfortune to the world, that they appear when you least expect them to kill you, and that you should be careful. This caused a great deal of distress to the Kitsunes, who, being mistaken for them, were hunted and there were few left in the world. It is currently unknown whether there are any living Kitsunes or not, but here is the information that makes them different. To begin with the Kitsune element, there are 5 elements, and each one corresponds to a Kitsune. There are the water Kitsunes, capable of walking on water, usually blue in color. They control water at will without tiring, in addition to solidifying water to generate powerful weapons that help in battle or also a shield. These are usually very elusive, along with the calmer ones. Fire Kitsunes are among the most destructive, capable of passing through the hottest flames without being affected. They control the flames and their temperature to extreme levels that resemble lava. They never feel cold because they are used to large amounts of heat. They throw fireballs, and their fur is red or orange. The Kitsunes of the wind, very agile and fast Kitsunes, as you might guess, can control the air or wind. They can create wind blades that go very fast towards their opponent, as well as air bullets or huge whirlpools that can leave the opponent without air. They have white fur. The lightning Kitsunes are the fastest and most unpredictable. They control lightning, and the sky works in their favor during storms, as they have better control over natural lightning. They can also envelop themselves in lightning armor, which serves as a defense. Anyone who touches it will be electrocuted. This armor also makes them faster, and their fur is somewhat blue and ruffled. And lastly, the earth Kitsunes, those who control nature, can make trees, vegetation and everything grow. They control the earth and rocks at will, hardening the rocks, but few of these train to fight. They have brown fur. These are the Kitsunes, very powerful animals with great abilities that could destroy everything if they wanted to, who now live in hiding, trying to repopulate their species. But this costs them because being hidden rarely allows them to get together, and they have to train to reach a considerable level of tails to go without any danger. But what do the Qs mean? The tails represent the level of power and wisdom of a Kitsune, which is gained through pure training, meditation, and control of their element. The Kitsune can live for years longer than 10 humans or even more years, but a Kitsune has 2 ways to die. One is to cut off the Kitsune's head in its human form, since they are vulnerable in that state, and another is that if they are in their fox form, their tail has to be cut off because it has more vital points, but since there are many tails, they are all cut off. We are currently in the Taisho era, an era that has very promising hunters alongside strong pillars who are willing to kill Muzan. Each pillar with its respective breadth, power, and position of power. Guided by the now head of the organization called Kagayubayashiki, or as they call him, the boss. He guides all the hunters and tells them that they are like his children. But we won't concentrate on him. If not a hunter, more specifically a pillar, his appearance and name will not be mentioned, but let's just say he's there for a reason. This hunter and pillar is not human, he is a Kitsune who was sent to the organization to kill the hunters so that they do not harm his species and so that they are the ones who will end Muzan. This Kitsune has been infiltrating them for a long time, or rather watching them from the shadows, and was prepared to finish them off as well. But ending them was a thought he had had since he was only watching over them, and now that he had to live with humans, he hesitated too much. He didn't know what to do, whether to continue with his mission because it was complicated. I didn't know what to do. What should I do now? He said, remembering his reason for accepting the mission. Chapter 2. Flashback. We see a small boy with jet black hair, tails, and fox ears. They were blue and moved as he gazed at the moon from a tree branch, lost in thought. This child was very happy, but then someone called him. "Hey Giyuu, it's time to eat," said a girl's female voice. Giyuu turned his head, looking at the girl. She was taller than him and looked at him with a smile on her face. She also had blue eyes, 4 blue tails that moved, and her ears were also blue. "Giyuu." "Okay Tsutako ni-san," said the boy as he went to his sister named Tsutako. Giyuu had 2 tails. They were both in a forest and went home, transforming into small blue foxes, arriving at a house near a village. When they arrived they transformed into humans without the fox parts in them. They were Kitsunes who lived a peaceful life alongside humans in a humble village that was very pleasant for them. They weren't bad, they were both somewhat playful, Tomioka, very lively, although Giyuu was somewhat shy and didn't joke around. Of course, these fox-like figures didn't want to have a bad reputation in the town where they lived, but tonight it all ended. The 2 Tomioka brothers were enjoying a quiet meal until a noise at their door disrupted their peace. Tsutako had her ears out and her tails tense. She knew this happened when there was danger. Using her Kitsune power, she was trying to see if the aura was human, and what a surprise she got when she saw that it was a demon. She became serious, unleashing her aura to its full power, and Giyuu was frightened by this, since he knew that when he saw his sister like this, it meant there was danger. "Demon. What bad manners," he said, breaking down the door and entering, but was surprised to find himself greeted by a large amount of solidified water in the shape of swords that pinned him to the ground. "Demon. What the hell," he said, impressed as the swords pierced his arms. "Tsutako. Demonic trash, never come back," she said, creating a solidified water axe that fell on the demon's neck, cutting it. "Demon. Ha 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 ha, that won't kill me, ha 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 ha," he said, very confident that he was going to recover. "Tsutako. I don't think so, if I destroy you piece by piece until you disappear," she said, using more power to create more weapons of solidified water. Giyuu just stared at his sister in fear. But something broke in Giyuu there, for a hunter had arrived. He had mercilessly cut off Tsutako's head in a downward cut next to the demon's head. Giyuu saw his headless sister right there next to the demon's body. The demon was disappearing as the hunter's ninchurin sword cut it when its head rejoined it. "Giyuu. And Ni-san," he said, looking at the hunter who just left without paying attention to Giyuu. Giyuu went to see his headless sister already dead. He couldn't believe it, he had lost his sister. Suddenly the soul of a blue fox came out of the body and just jumped towards what would be the starry sky while shedding tears. Suddenly it began to rain, very violently. The raindrops hitting the ground did not hit Giyuu. This was an announcement. One of the last of the water Kitsunes had died and left, leaving a void. Giyuu was so angry that he released his aura, causing the rain to become stronger as a storm was passing through. "Giyuu. Damned humans, I've had enough, I'll kill the hunters myself, no matter what," he said angrily as his tails violently released, going from 2 tails to 3 tails. In his anger, he decided to form a huge stake of water and without thinking much, he threw it to a random place, creating a very large crater and emerged from there with his sister's body in the form of a very large fox. But the body on his back. I arrived at a field, the field where the 2 of them revealed their true nature. It was a beautiful lake surrounded by sakura trees. In the middle was another huge and beautiful tree where he and his sister used to play in their fox forms. This place was special to Giyuu, and it was where he was going to bury his beloved sister. He simply dug a hole and buried his sister's body. "Giyuu. I promise you Ni-san that I will avenge you, humans will know pain, they will know the fury of a Kitsune, there has been too much peace and tolerance, it is time for us Kitsunes to rise up," he thought angrily, returning to his small fox form. First, he had to go to the Kitsune meeting. He had to ask permission from the Kitsune leader. Without wasting any time, he ran off, already knowing where it was. Being one of the last Kitsunes with water, he had to know where it was, and he was going to ask her to do him the favor of finishing off the hunters once he had enough power. It had been a long journey for Giyuu, but he finally found it, the place where the highest authority of the Kitsunes was located. He entered the great tree. The guards recognized Giyuu, and he showed no advantage by only having 3 tails of power. He went to the throne room where he saw the great owner of that place and the most powerful of the Kitsunes at the moment. That girl had a lot of tails, strength, and everything. "Giyuu. It's a pleasure and an honor to see you in good health, Yusaka-sama," he said, seeing the woman smile. "Yusaka." Giyuu Tomioka, a water element kitsune and one of the last remaining. I'm sorry for the loss of your sister, Tsutako Tomioka. Giyuu. Thank you for your words, Yasaka-sama, but I wanted to make a request. If this three-tailed water kitsune may be allowed, he said very respectfully, kneeling down. Yasaka. Stand up, little kitsune, and tell me your request, she said, looking at Giyuu, who stopped kneeling. Giyuu. As you know, my late sister Tsutako Tomioka has passed away, but not from natural causes or a demon, but a human, he said seriously, and Yasaka was shocked. Yasaka. But how is it possible for a human to kill a kitsune? She said in disbelief. Giyuu. It wasn't a fight against a human, she was protecting me from a demon who decided to attack us, and she was going to finish him off without any problem, but a member of the demon hunters arrived and attacked my sister, thinking she was a demon, he said, letting out some tears but breathing to calm himself. Yasaka. I see humans are usually ignorant and idiotic, she said angrily. Giyuu. That's why I'm here. We kitsune have had enough tolerance of humans. Wouldn't it be better if we dealt with the demons ourselves? Wouldn't it be better to kill the hunters to reduce kitsune casualties? He said seriously, looking at Yasaka, who was shocked. Yasaka. Listen, I know you must be filled with anger, but I cannot authorize you to kill humans, much less the hunters. They are necessary to get rid of the demons and Muzan Kibutsuji. Because of him, we also lost the kitsunes, since he wanted power and tried to experiment on them. Luckily, nothing worked, she said sadly, remembering her people dying that way. Giyuu was angry but serious. He was certain his leader was right. Even if he didn't want to admit it, they needed them to win, because despite having great power, they would have to endure the demons remaining until daybreak. Giyuu. Then I request that until I obtain the necessary power, I keep an eye on that organization. To help more quickly, I will join after a few years, since in my current state, the help would be minimal, he said seriously, looking at Yasaka, who was shocked by this. Yasaka. The advantages would be many, Tomioka Giyuu. This will be your mission, trained to grow more tails, you will join the demon hunters. If in a report you or a kitsune informs me about what they are like there, you will be given authorization to kill them, depending on your point of view, she said seriously, and Giyuu nodded at that. He proceeded to leave there in a fit of rage at having to live now with the race that murdered his sister. Meanwhile, Yasaka. Yasaka. Giyuu, we can't kill, we're peaceful to protect each other, and making them hunt us more if they think kitsunes are bad wouldn't be good, she thought seriously and sadly about the path that little kitsune wanted to follow. Giyuu, for his part, only left the palace hidden under illusions so that no human would know of the place. There his journey would begin. First, he had to train to increase his kitsune power, and then he would have to find a retired hunter to teach him how to use the sword. He would have to pretend to be human to infiltrate. Pulse back end. Giyuu. Too many years have passed, I think about 500 years, and I've reached a good level of power. I had planned to kill them, but I can't. They're selfish humans and all, but their reasons for being this way are justifiable. This mission isn't worth it anymore. Time for plan B. I'll have to pretend to die. I admire them, but they hate me, and if they knew who I am and what my objective was, they would despise me even more, especially you, Sabito, he thought sadly. He already possessed some 7 tails, although it was actually a lie. Now he was on a cliff, no longer able to bear the hateful stares he received from some. He truly saw what humans are like, how their actions have consequences, and he wouldn't deny that they have reasons to think that kitsunes resemble demons. Giyuu was now looking at the cliff. He had thrown himself into his kitsune form to avoid dying, and he created a fake body of water. He modified it as best he could, and it was just like him. It had the features of a common human, he even added blood and made a claw wound. It was also night. His plan was to pretend that a demon had knocked him down in a fight to make it seem normal. Then, the body was dead and covered in fake blood. Everything was ready, and to make it seem like the supposed demon hadn't devoured him, it was almost dawn. So he concentrated enough energy to make the body last a week and not raise suspicions. Giyuu. I'm truly sorry, Oyakata-sama, pillars, I'm truly sorry for what my desire for revenge almost caused. I'm sorry, Sabito. You were the first to make me see that it was worthwhile to leave them alive. Now the position of pillar will belong to you. I trust that you will manage to finish off Muzan, he said as he left, leaving the fake body. Chapter 3. We see a girl with long jet black hair. She had 2 butterfly brooches on each side of her hair, pale skin, pink eyes. She also had the typical hunter's outfit, a haori that looked like a butterfly. She was tall, and she was thoughtful. Sitting on the edge of her bed, she thought about the things that had happened since that event, an event that happened a week ago. She was bandaged from her shoulder to a wound near her stomach, it went across her chest, and it was painful, or rather it had been painful since she was recovering. This was Kocho, the flower pillar, an agile and strong pillar who had the demon slayer core. The woman who recently had a mission in which she was sure she was going to die because not long ago, or rather a week ago, she had a confrontation with what would be the upper moon too, called Dauma. He had made cuts on her with his fans that had a very sharp edge. In addition to having her lungs frozen by the demon's technique, she was already considered dead. She was going to lose consciousness from blood loss. Flashback. Male Pav. I was ready to die. I wish I could see my sister and the girls, Himejima-san and the others, so I could say goodbye, but what can you do, my body feels very weak. He's right in front of me, about to kill me. I can't even move anymore, this is the end. I decide not to see and close my eyes, waiting for his cut. But I didn't hear or feel anything. I opened my eyes wearily and saw my mission partner Giyuu Tomioka, who defended me. I was shocked. I thought I was going to die, and then he arrived. My eyes were closing from exhaustion and I couldn't go on, but I don't know if it was because of my bad state or something, but I swear I saw something. Tomioka, he had a fox's tail and ears, that's when I fainted. I woke up at the butterfly estate, bandaged on my most serious wound, and saw my little sister Shinobu enter. Shinobu? Ni-san. Are you alright? You're finally awake. She said, and I saw her eyes with dark circles. It looks like she cried, but how long has it been? I just woke up. Annie? Shinobu? Ugh, God, I said, complaining of pain as I tried to move. Shinobu? Ni-san, don't move, you're still hurt, she said, very worried, looking at me, and I just nodded but decided to ask. Annie? How long was I asleep and where is Tomioka-san? I asked, worried about him because I don't know if he's alright or not. Shinobu? You've been unconscious for 2 days. I already stitched up your wound and you just need to rest until it closes and heals. And the water pillar isn't here. When he arrived, I saw him with minor injuries, but he just left you here and went away. That idiot really didn't care when I told him he had to treat him, my sister said, irritated by what seemed to be her being ignored by Tomioka-san. I just nodded and was resting to go back to my work, but I couldn't get it out of my mind. I swear I saw Tomioka-san for a moment with foxtails and ears. I don't know what's wrong with me, maybe it was just an illusion or something. I didn't think about it anymore and I fell asleep. End of Pav of Kanny. End of flashback. From that day on, Kocho couldn't get the image of Giyuu with fox limbs out of her mind. The image simply stayed with her. She had to say they looked so real, but she couldn't tell if it was just her imagination. She sighed and relaxed. She was feeling better now. It usually hurt a little, but nothing she couldn't handle. She was better. There was an urgent meeting in the morning saying that something bad had happened and that the attention of the pillars and the other Urakadaki student was needed. Annie did not refuse and prepared herself and went with Shinobu's help to that meeting. When they arrived they didn't see Tomioka, but they did see Sabito, who was surprised not to see his friend there at the meeting, and the bad comments were not long in coming. Tsunemi. Where the hell is that bastard Tomioka? Said Tsunemi Shinazugawa, the wind pillar, irritated. Iguro. What did you expect from that boastful rat-faced Iguro? Obanai, the snake pillar, equally irritated. Mitsuri. I don't think Tomioka-san will be late, she said nervously because of the atmosphere. This was Mitsuri Kanroji, the love pillar. Yuzui. Besides, Tomioka has an old crow, so he's sure to be late, said Yuzui Tenjin, the sound pillar, trying to calm the atmosphere. Haijiro. Don't worry, the master will arrive soon, the flame pillar said with a smile to his companions. Himejima. I will pray for your health, said calmly, it was Himejima Jayame, the rock pillar. Michiro. What is Sabito-san doing here? Said the mist pillar Michiro Takedo to his companions, who had a drop of sweat on their faces because of it. Annie. We need to stay calm, Kanny said smiling as she leaned on Shinobu because her wound still hurt a little. Oyakata-sama has arrived, said a girl, and all the pillars knelt down, showing their respect to the master, Kagaya Bayashiki. Kagaya. Good morning my children, he said calmly in front of all the pillars. Tsunemi. Good morning Oyakata-sama, I hope you are in good health, he said calmly, looking at the master. Kagaya. Thank you, my son. With this, we can begin the meeting, he said calmly. Haijiro. With all due respect, Oyakata-sama, but the water pillar is missing, he said, smiling and somewhat surprised that he hadn't arrived. Kagaya. The pillar is not here because there is bad news about him, he said somewhat sadly, surprising the others. Annie. What happened to Tomioka-san? She asked curiously, wanting to thank him for saving her from that encounter. Kagaya. The water pillar Giyuu Tomioka was found dead on a cliff, he said sadly, surprising the others. Tsunemi. What Tomioka what? He said, shocked. Kagaya. Yes, he was found dead, apparently a demon took him by surprise and when he fell with the demon down the cliff, it caused him to die, he said sadly. Sabito couldn't believe his friend was dead and fell to his knees, tears streaming down his face. Sabito. No, it can't be, he said with tears in his eyes. Annie. I couldn't thank her for the help, she thought sadly. Everyone was shocked by Giyuu's sudden death. While he was in his fox form running at great speed through the forest while thinking about what to say in his report. Giyuu. I made a mistake, I hope Yusaka-sama will be merciful and not give me a horrible punishment, but what am I saying if she's going to punish me for my stupid blindness of revenge, he thought sadly, letting some tears fall into his eyes. But as he thought about it, he realized that he was just wandering around and was at the hunter's headquarters and saw the meeting. Giyuu. I guess I did grow fond of the pillars, he said, looking at the pillars and the master. Giyuu. I suppose I must see them for the last time, he said, watching as they went to the funeral of his now fake dead body. He just stood there watching as they already had the coffin and went to what would be the hunter's cemetery. Giyuu. I see they're only doing it out of respect and don't care much about my death. I don't blame them, if I were in their place I'd do the same, he thought somewhat sadly, watching them from a hidden spot. Giyuu had the appearance of this fox. He looked like that when he was sad or in a normal state. Giyuu. Sorry, he said in his mind, seeing his friend crying at the grave. But he saw Kanae, who was in a lot of pain and shedding tears. Giyuu. I see that I must help her more, the little healing essence I gave her is not helping her, he thought, worried about Kanae. Originally Kanae should have been dead, but Giyuu used his healing power to close her wound and thaw her lungs so that she could survive, but not so much that her healing would be suspected. He saw that she was still in pain and knew he had to help her. He knew the wound had closed and now he could help her. Once the funeral was over, it was already night and Giyuu, in his fox form, was at the butterfly estate. More specifically, in Kanae's room, seeing her resting with a pained expression on her face. Giyuu proceeded to ignite his Kitsune power, his hair glowing slightly and taking on a beautiful color. Using the humidity in the air, he generated light compressed water balls that turned a bluish-green color as Giyuu touched them with his tails. After that, Giyuu carefully placed the small balls on Kanae's wound to heal it and saw a calm expression on her face. Giyuu continued until he finally finished. Giyuu. For helping me Kocho, I'm just helping you, he said as he left. He was in his human form and Kitsune was watching him. Giyuu. Goodbye and sorry, he said, looking at her, not noticing that her eyes were half open but tired. Annie could swear she was seeing Giyuu, but with ears. She didn't know what was happening or why Giyuu had ears, but she saw that he had turned into a fox. Then he left. I didn't know if it was a dream or something like that, maybe an illusion. Chapter 4. A month had passed since the death of Giyuu Tomioka, now the position of water pillar was held by Sabito, who was very sad about the death of his friend. But we will not focus on him, but on Kanae Kocho who kept thinking about what she supposedly saw. First she saw Giyuu again, but with ears, and then he transformed into a fox. She didn't understand what was happening, because if it was a dream, she didn't understand why she was dreaming about Giyuu, and if it was real was Giyuu a demon? Or something like that. And if so, why didn't he kill her, or why didn't she feel any pain from her wound after that day? I didn't understand anything. I thought it was more of a dream, but if it was a dream, what did it mean that I didn't feel any pain from my wound? It was supposed to hurt until it was fully healed. And I still hadn't found an answer, but I didn't care. Now I was heading towards the boss's farm. Kagaya. Good morning Kanae, he said, looking at Kanae. Kanae. Good morning Oyakata-sama, I hope you are in good health, she said in a respectful tone to the master who smiled at that. Kagaya. Thank you for your kind wishes, Kanae, but I called you for an important mission. There are rumors of frequent disappearances in a village, and many low-ranking hunters have already vanished, he said, sounding sad that many of his children were leaving. Kanae. I understand, Oyakata-sama. I will leave immediately, she said calmly, withdrawing from the master's estate. Even the thoughts of a fox like Giyuu were still in her head and she didn't quite know what to do, she just felt bad for not thanking Giyuu for saving her that time, the guilt of at least not thanking him gnawed at her a little, but she had to move on. While Giyuu was in a forest in his Kitsune form, lying under a tree in the shade, staring into nothingness, not thinking about anything, just him and nature. Their tails were completely still, not making any kind of movement, with a look that radiated total confusion. Giyuu? What could have happened? My clone is gone, he said calmly with some common foxes nearby. Giyuu decided to play a little by playing with the water, which was in a small nearby river, and made small animal figures while playing. Giyuu? I wish I could see them again, he said, thinking of the pillars, his friend Sabito, and Master Urakadaki. It felt awful to think they should be eliminated when they weren't guilty of anything, just victims of fear and a hard life that cost them almost everything. Giyuu? Oh god Nissan, what should I do now? Do you think I should try to find a female after her? He asked, forming the figure of his sister with the water. But what did Giyuu mean when he said after her? Simply put, in Kitsunes there is the issue of male and female like any animal, only in the Kitsune race when a male is going to have a female they mark her with a bite on the neck. Giyuu had a female, more specifically a fire kitsune whom he loved very much, but as you can see, Giyuu is a water kitsune, and his former female was a fire one. They weren't going to be a good match, but also, his former female was unfaithful to him. When a female is unfaithful to her male, the alpha kitsune suffers chest pain, leaving him on the verge of death from the great pain he feels as his heart breaks. Giyuu suffered from that. He was on the verge of death. Many kitsunes chose death to avoid remembering their former mate, but Giyuu, in those times, had his goal clear. He was going to continue to avenge his sister. Although after all she had no reason to continue, and at this moment she was only looking at the water figure of her sister. Giyuu. I wish you were here, Ni-san, he said, dissolving his sister's figure and watering the surrounding plants. Giyuu. Night is near, he said, but suddenly a golden light appeared and he saw a kitsune from Yasaka's guard. Kitsune X. Giyuu Tomioka water kitsune, he said, looking at him seriously. Giyuu. Yasaka-sama's kitsune guard, what do you need me for? He said, looking at him seriously. Kitsune X. Yasaka-sama has a message for you. This area has the most consistent water flow, and we need you, as the last of the water kitsunes, to protect this place. We'll also discuss the need for new water kitsunes, but that will come later. There are demons in this area, and you need to eliminate them. Dino said seriously. Giyuu. I understand, I'll do what I can, taking advantage of the hunter's ninchurin, he said, drawing the hunter's katana. Kitsune X. Understood, but make sure no one sees you, we can't lose you, you're the last male kitsune, he said before disappearing. Giyuu. Looks like there will be work to be done, nothing different from these 500 or more years, he said, getting up and stretching. Once night fell, Kocho was nervously watching over the village, as many hunters had been eliminated there, even though they were highly skilled. It was either a moon or an army of them. Either option gave him the creeps, but he had to be strong. She noticed a certain silhouette moving and quickly went to check what it was and saw it. Not one, not two, not three, but a whole lot of demons. She counted about 20 to 30. She didn't know if she could do much, and she already understood why several died, and what she saw paralyzed her. The hunters who were there were being tortured and some were dead. Demon X. Damned hunters, because of them we couldn't finish off this village quickly. They were a problem, but they will soon die and won't kill any more of us, he said, laughing along with the rest. Peony. Flower breath, 5th form. Peonies of futility, said Kocho, unleashing an elegant flurry of 9 consecutive attacks that flowed and intertwined. The heads of 9 demons were sent flying. Demon X. What the hell? He said in surprise, and many demons went to attack. But what Kanny didn't expect was that many demons would attack with blood techniques, and she began to defend herself. Peony. Flower breath, 2nd stance. Plum's honorable shadow, she said, beginning to defend herself with rotary cuts. She defended herself as best she could and blocked a demon's blow to breathe again. Peony. Flower breath, 6th form. Spinning peach, she said, spinning with her body weight to launch an attack. The head flew off, but some demons with a combined attack threw it far away, causing great damage to Kanny, who felt very bad. She was in a lot of pain because although she could withstand those attacks, they were a combination of bodily damage and damage to her stamina, in addition to launching stance after stance, leaving her without a little air and taking all the air out of her with that attack. Demons. A pillar to kill, they said excitedly, to kill her. Suddenly, compressed water stakes were driven from the ground into the demons. Peony. What? She said, shocked, seeing those demons who were shocked. Until he saw something, a fox. Kitsune. Grrrrrrr, growled the fox, and chains of water trapped the demons. And the chains rose and crashed against the ground with force. It should be noted that Kanny was on the ground very weak and the kitsune did not notice. He just kept attacking again and again. Kanny was shocked to see that fox attacking the demons with water. She didn't know what to do, but she stayed still, just in case, pretending to be unconscious. The kitsune looked at the demons and transformed into his human form. Giyuu. You bucking demons, die already. She said, taking out her ninchurin and cutting off the demons' heads. Giyuu. Oh god, he said, returning to his fox form. And he ran away from there. Kanny, who had rested a little, chased after that fox. She couldn't believe it. Was her companion alive? Was he a demon? Or what was he to kill demons? These were questions she always asked herself. Chapter 5. Kanny ran in the direction of where she saw her companion, who should have been dead. The body had been found, but there was no report that it had been removed from its grave. So how was it possible that she saw him there? The only explanation was that Giyuu was a demon, but if that were the case, why did he save her? He didn't quite understand what had happened, but he quickly increased his speed so as not to lose him, since Giyuu was now in a fox form. Until they reached an open clearing that was a kind of circle of trees surrounding another normal one, nothing out of the ordinary, except that he saw the fox arrive at that middle tree and transform into Giyuu. Giyuu. I guess mission accomplished, he said calmly, leaning his back against a tree and looking up at the sky where the moon was. Annie? Is he a demon? She wondered, looking at Giyuu who was calm while his tails moved. Giyuu. Now what report should I give Yusaka-sama about the previous mission? It doesn't matter, I'll be punished anyway, he said, sighing wearily and stretching his arms. Annie? Who is Yusaka? If she's a demon, wouldn't she be Muzan? She thought, somewhat curious and angry. She didn't know why, but it angered her that Giyuu mentioned Yusaka. Until he saw a kind of beam of light appear, revealing a Kitsune. Kitsune X. Yusaka-sama is looking for you, Water Kitsune Dino said seriously, looking at Giyuu who was also serious. Giyuu? I suppose for the mission report, right? He said normally. Annie, who heard the word Kitsune, was shocked. She had heard stories about these beings when she was younger, but she never thought she would see them in person. She thought they were myths. Kitsune X. Yes, Yusaka-sama wants to know your report and also when you're going to get a female to repopulate the water kitsunes, he said seriously, looking at Giyuu. Giyuu? I'll go for the report, but regarding the female issue, I don't want to talk about it, he said, showing sadness on his face. Annie was very curious and someone surprised her from behind. Sabito. Kocho, what's wrong? Asked Sabito, the new water pillar, looking at Kanny who covered his mouth. Annie? SHHH look, she whispered, showing Sabito what was happening at that moment, surprising him since he saw Giyuu. Sabito. But is Giyuu a demon? He whispered, staring incredulously at seeing Giyuu there. Annie? I don't know if he's a demon, I heard that other one with him call him a water kitsune, she said seriously, and they both decided to listen. Kitsune X. Well, we'll see what happens, but we have to go to Yusaka-sama, he said before disappearing, surprising those who were hiding. Giyuu sighed and looked to the sides, suddenly he took out 9 tails. Yes, 9, Giyuu had reached that point, the maximum point and maximum power of a kitsune. Both pillars saw Giyuu and were surprised. Giyuu? As a water kitsune, I request permission from the Kitsune Kingdom, he said as his tails glowed blue. Both pillars were a little confused, they thought he was crazy until they saw a kind of portal open. Giyuu entered calmly, walking quickly towards the Kitsune Kingdom. Both pillars, not wanting to let him go without really knowing what was happening, so when they saw the portal was closing, they quickly went inside. Giyuu didn't see them because he didn't think anyone could see him. Annie and Sabito were surprised to see the Kitsune Kingdom. That place was beautiful, but… Giyuu was now looking at Yusaka who was serious. Yusaka. Alright, water kitsune, I want your report on your 500-year mission, she said seriously, looking at Giyuu. Giyuu. The mission was a waste of time, my apologies, Yusaka-sama, I investigated the hunter organization and I saw that they are not bad. I let myself be carried away by my desire for revenge for a hunter having killed my sister. I saw that they may be bad, but their motives are justifiable. They suffer a lot, he said, kneeling waiting to be yelled at or punished in some way. Yusaka. Tomioka, the original mission was for you to realize your mistake and since you've managed that, everything is fine now, so don't feel like you're going to relive a punishment, she said calmly, looking at Giyuu, who was somewhat calmer. Giyuu? I understand, Yusaka-sama. My apologies for wasting your time by giving you a report that failed. He said, being very respectful to her. Yusaka. It's alright, calm down, but what I want to talk about now is she didn't finish because a kitsune appeared. Kitsune X. Yusaka-sama, I'm sorry to interrupt what you're talking about, but he said, unsure whether to say what was wrong. Yusaka. Tell me what's wrong, she said, looking at him seriously. Kitsune X. I don't know how, but humans managed to enter the kingdom, he said, surprising Yusaka and Giyuu. Yusaka. Bring them here at once, she said, somewhat agitated. Then 2 more kitsunes appeared and showed Kanny and Sabito that they were tied up. This shocked Giyuu greatly, as he never expected to see them there. Giyuu? What are you doing here, he whispered in disbelief at seeing them, and they seemed to be in the same state upon seeing him there. Sabito. Giyuu, what the hell is going on? Did you betray us? He said angrily, looking at Giyuu, who was scared. He already had the hatred of the other pillars and didn't want his friend, who had helped him see things more clearly, to hate him too. Yusaka. Tomioka, do you know them? She said seriously, looking at Giyuu who lowered his head. Annie. Who are you? She said, sounding a little scared. Kitsune X. Show more respect to Yusaka-sama, he said seriously, looking at Kanny with a dead stare, scaring her. Sabito. Speak up already, Giyuu, what's wrong? He said, looking at Giyuu who had his ears down. Yusaka. Speak, she said, looking at Giyuu. Giyuu. Yusaka-sama, these are the water and flower pillars, hunters from the Demon Hunter organization, people I worked with while I infiltrated the organization, he said, somewhat saddened by having to reveal the truth. Sabito. What do you mean infiltrator? Were you planning to kill us, you bastard? Are you a bucking demon? he said angrily, looking at Giyuu, who was very sad at that moment. Kitsune's. How dare you compare us to those damned human scum, we would never be that corrupt, he said angrily. Isaka. Calm down, Tomioka, explain to them who we are, she said, and Giyuu saw them. Giyuu. We are not demons, humans. I, along with Yasaka-sama, the guard, and the rest who live here outside, are Kitsunes, beings that existed before demons, he said, looking at them and surprising them with the information he gave them. Annie. But why did you infiltrate the organization? She said, confused. Giyuu. My original goal was to kill them to see what they're like and decide if their organization deserves death so they don't affect it, but it was mostly because 500 years ago or more, one of their hunters killed my sister, mistaking her for a demon, he said seriously, looking at them, who were shocked by this. They didn't know what to think. Did Giyuu never interact with anyone because his goal was to kill them? Subito. And we're going to be the first to die. He said, shocked. Isaka. It all depends on the report you gave me and your organization is safe. Kitsunes aren't aggressive unless it's to protect our family, and you should be grateful for that, because otherwise we would have killed everyone, she said seriously, emanating her aura and frightening both pillars who had never felt such pressure. Annie Subito. Thank you, they said, relieved. Isaka. But there will be a trial for entering our kingdom, guard summon the supreme Kitsunes of fire, wind, earth and lightning. The supreme Kitsune of water is already here, take care of summoning them to begin their trial, she said very seriously, frightening both pillars. Annie. Supreme Kitsunes. She said, sounding a little scared. Subito. Who are they? He said, frightened. Giyuu. They are the 5 most powerful Kitsunes below Yasaka-sama, the Kitsunes that have 9 tails and are the strongest in their element, something similar to the pillars of his organization, only there are 5, because there were only 5 elements, he said seriously, shocking both pillars. Subito. And who are they? He said, somewhat frightened. Isaka. You'll see, but you're standing before the supreme Kitsune of water, Giyuu. Tomioka, Kitsune of water, and the last living Kitsune of water, has 9 tails, only his identity has not yet been revealed, she said seriously, further shocking the pillars. Giyuu. I thought that I didn't finish. Isaka. It's time you took the position. You already have great power and the 9 tails, and you fought against demons, so you deserve the position, she said seriously. Chapter 6. Previously, Yasaka, the queen of the Kitsunes, summoned the supreme Kitsunes of their respective elements. Annie. Subito-san, what are we going to do? She said nervously, thinking they would be killed. Subito. I don't know, we just have to wait, he said seriously, since they had no escape. A while passed and suddenly whirlwinds of earth, fire, wind and lightning emerged from the ground. They saw that each one had a prominent figure. They looked imposing. The whirlwind disappeared, revealing a 9-tailed Kitsune with long white hair, strange clothes, a kind of white kimono, a fox at his neck, and a fan. Known as the supreme Kitsune of the wind, he could control the winds, whether violently or calmly, cutting you without you even seeing them. He was Shiryu. The other whirlwind, the one of fire, disappeared, revealing a female figure. A Kitsune girl with black hair and orange tips, red ears, tails with white details and mostly red, a red kimono adorned with flowers, and a yellow ribbon. She is the supreme Kitsune of fire, known as the mistress of flames, the one who burns and brings fires to anyone who dares to challenge her. Her flames or fire never go out unless she wills it. She is Sakiko. The dust devil disappeared, revealing another female figure with 9 tails and brown ears, wearing a brown or semi-yellow kimono, long, semi-yellow and brown hair, and a white kimono. She was the supreme Kitsune of the earth, known as the one who brings vegetation. Her fury makes the earth tremble, her calm gives life and fertility to the lands. She is not much for fighting. She is Gaia. The last one, the lightning whirlwind, disappeared and revealed a male figure who appeared to have only 1 tail, but it was actually his 9 tails joined into one. His fur was blue and black, and his clothes were strange and black. This is the supreme Kitsune of lightning, one whose speed is unmatched, whose attacks leave you paralyzed and burn you with electricity. He is Raijin. The 4 supreme Kitsunes have gathered before their mistress, their queen, their adoptive mother. Raijin. What brings you here, Yasaka-sama? Said the Kitsune of lightning, kneeling. Aya. And why do you need the presence of the 4 supreme Kitsunes, Yasaka-sama? She said seriously but with a kind smile on her face, looking at Yasaka, who was serious. Yasaka. To begin with, there are no longer just 4 supreme Kitsunes, after 500 years we finally have the supreme Kitsune of water, she said, seeing the surprise of the 4 Kitsunes, who were not expecting that news, because the only Kitsune of water was Yasaka. Tomioka, bring out your 9 tails, she said seriously, and Giyuu appeared and brought out his 9 blue tails. Aya, Raijin, Sakiko and Shiryu never thought they would see Giyuu Tomioka standing there with 9 tails. They felt the aura he emanated. It showed calmness, a calmness like a very peaceful lake, but if he unleashed his anger, it would be like a stormy sea. Raijin. I see you reached that point, Giyuu, he said calmly, smiling at Giyuu. Although he may not seem like it, the Supreme Kitsune of Lightning had a very close friendship with Giyuu. Raijin once saw Giyuu training so hard that he became worried about him and helped him. Giyuu had told him his goal, and although he somewhat agreed with Giyuu, it couldn't be done. But even so, his visits and constant conversations didn't stop, although they diminished when Raijin was promoted to Supreme Kitsune. Giyuu. It's good to see you, Raijin-san, said the now Supreme Kitsune of Water calmly. Raijin. After this I'll challenge you to a fight, I don't think you're at that level for nothing, he said, smiling with small rays emanating from his large tail in excitement. Aya. It's good to know you're alright, Giyuu-chan, said the Earth Kitsune calmly, who always cooperates with Giyuu for the fertility of the land. Giyuu. Likewise, Gaia-san, he said quietly. Tsukiko. Hello, Tomioka, she said, smiling at Giyuu, who just became serious and looked without any emotion. Giyuu. Hello, he said without even saying his name. Shiryu. Well, we'll talk about this later. What's going on that you, Yasaka-sama, are calling us? He said seriously, looking at Yasaka. Yasaka. The reason is a trial since humans have entered the Kitsune realm, he said seriously, and the Kitsune turned to look at the very serious humans, noticing that they were nervous. Tsukiko. Wow, I noticed they're hunters, from the mission Tomioka had, she said, looking at them. Raijin. Well, this is new, no human has ever entered the kingdom, he said seriously, looking at them. Shiryu. I say we kill them, we can't let them go knowing of our existence, he said seriously, he couldn't let humans know about them. Aya. We don't have to go to those extremes either, maybe we can erase their memory, she said, thinking that would be best so as not to harm anyone. Giyuu. He didn't say anything, he didn't know if there was a solution for them. Tsukiko. What's wrong, Tomioka? Don't you have any idea how to fix this? Or are you still hurting from it? She said, looking amusedly at Giyuu, who frowned at that. Giyuu. That's not it, Tsukiko-san, I'm just looking at the disadvantages, he said, thinking about a few things. Shiryu. Haha, what disadvantages, Tomioka, they're just humans, if their memories are erased nothing will happen, or have you grown fond of these mortals? He said, looking at Giyuu, who was getting angry. Giyuu. I'm not referring to that, Shiryu-san, to begin with, remember that since memories aren't constantly erased, the power needed isn't measured, and if it's exceeded, it will be erased to the point where memories can't be recovered. And since they are hunters, we need them to take care of Muzan, and killing them isn't good either. That would reveal our existence, he said very seriously, looking at both Kitsunes, who frowned. Raijin. I support Giyuu, but we still have to see what we do with them, he said seriously. Subito. Please let us go, we won't say anything, he said, sounding a little scared. Aya. We can't, how do we know they're trustworthy? She said seriously. Giyuu. They are, he said seriously, surprising the Kitsunes. Raijin. Why do you say that? He said seriously. Giyuu. On my mission I had to live with them and I assure you that they are trustworthy, he said confidently. The Kitsune of Wind and Fire were going to refuse, but Yasaka decided to speak. Yasaka. Tomioka Giyuu, if what you say is true, how sure are you that you can trust them? She said seriously, looking at Giyuu. The two pillars were nervous. Everything depended on what Giyuu said. Giyuu. I already gave my mission report to Yasaka-sama, and I can say that even a Kitsune can trust their life to them, so as a water Kitsune, I offer my life as payment in case they reveal anything about the Kitsunes, he said seriously, and Yasaka as well as the other 4 Kitsunes were impressed by Giyuu's words. Subito. He's truly willing to pay with his life for our sake, thought the water pillar, surprised, looking at Giyuu. Even though he was of another race, he was just as kind. Hanny. Thank you, Tomioka-san, but I'm wondering who that girl is who said that it still hurts, but that it hurts, the pillar thought somewhat curiously. Yasaka. A rather exorbitant price, but I accept it. Tomioka Giyuu, you'll have to trust them and keep an eye on them from time to see if your word that they're trustworthy is true, she said seriously, to which Giyuu nodded. Everyone agreed and Giyuu along with Subito and Kanai went to a place. Subito. Giyuu, do you really trust him? He said, looking at him, he no longer knew if he was his friend. Giyuu. Yes, you helped me to the point of stopping thinking about my revenge, he said, walking away without looking at them. Hanny. Thank you, Tomioka-san, she said smiling, but he didn't answer and a whirlwind of fire formed and Tsukiko came out of it. Tsukiko. Well, if you're still in the kingdom, Giyuu-san, she said, looking at him with a smile. Giyuu. What do you want, Supreme Kitsune of Fire? He said very coldly. Tsukiko. Oh, and what's with all the seriousness and coldness? You used to treat me like a princess, you even called me the love of your life, she said, laughing as she looked at Giyuu with his head bowed and seething with anger. Giyuu. That was until you decided to leave with a Wind Kitsune, he said seriously. Tsukiko. Because I was better than you, she said laughing. Annie and Sabito were shocked to see that scene. They didn't understand what was happening, but Kanny, for some reason, got angry when she heard what Tsukiko said. Giyuu. I won't waste my time on someone who isn't worth my time. I regret thinking you would be my mate, he said seriously, walking alongside Kanny and Sabito. Tsukiko. It's a shame you won't have anyone for your heat cycle, she said, leaving. Sabito. Was she your partner? He asked Giyuu. Giyuu. It was, he said seriously but sadly. Kanny. But why did you say female? Shouldn't it be girlfriend or wife? She said, confused and angry. Giyuu. Here among the Kitsunes, instead of saying girlfriend or wife, it's considered in terms of female or male, like an animal. They mark themselves to show they already have a partner and all that, but she betrayed me, and because of that I almost died, he said seriously. Sabito. What do you mean you almost died? He said, alarmed. Giyuu. When a Kitsune's mate betrays you with another, the Kitsune who was faithful, feels great pain that leaves him on the verge of death, he said seriously. Sabito. I understand now. Kanny. Excuse me, but when she said something about jealousy, she meant she didn't finish because Giyuu clarified. Giyuu. Kitsunes, like animals, have a mating season with hormonal changes, he said seriously, and his tails opened an entrance. Giyuu. Get out of the kingdom now, I'll be watching you, and if you say anything I'll die, and so will you, he said, watching them leave the Kitsune kingdom. Kanny. Thank you very much, Tomioka-kun, she said as she left with Sabito. Chapter 7. Giyuu was thinking about some things. He knew he could trust Kanny and Sabito to keep the secret of the Kitsunes, but that didn't worry him. Instead, something scared him. He was afraid of having to be committed to another female. He knew that sooner or later the time would come when he would have to reproduce with a Kitsune, but he was afraid that the same thing would happen with the Supreme Kitsune of Fire, since it really hurt him. That's why he didn't want another female. That scared him. But he snapped out of his thoughts when a Kitsune guard came to warn him about something. Kitsune X. Water Kitsune, go and keep an eye on the humans, these are orders from Yasaka-sama, he said seriously. It should be mentioned that around 2 months passed during which Giyuu watched over Kanny and Sabito from the shadows or while in his small fox form so as not to arouse suspicion. He just stood up and opened a portal to the human realm and jumped in his small fox form. When he closed the portal, he started running towards the hunter's headquarters. It was the only place he thought he would find those two. When he arrived, the first thing he did was go to the butterfly farm. If he was lucky, Sabito would be resting there and Kanny would be doing her things, and he was right. Sabito had returned from a mission and was resting in one of the beds at the butterfly estate, and Kanny was in her office making reports on hunter injuries, so she climbed a tree and began to watch them. There was nothing out of the ordinary, it was just the same as every day I watch them, and I take the opportunity to lie down under the tree. He was too tired to want to do anything. He was bored, so focused on his revenge that he never thought of doing anything. He had no hobbies other than watching the moon and eating daikon with salmon. Giyuu. Should I do something else these days? He thought calmly, knowing that nothing would happen or so he thought. He fell into a deep sleep from the effort he had made those days and couldn't take it anymore. When he fell asleep he looked like a normal fox, and just then the triplets from Butterfly Estate, Sumi, Kyo and Neho, saw Giyuu as a little fox and got excited. He was very cute and they carried him carefully and took him to the butterfly farm. When they arrived they saw Kanny and Shinobu come and approached. Sumi Kyo Neho. Kanny-sama Shinobu-sama, let us keep this fox. They said excitedly, showing the sleeping little fox. Shinobu. Girls, it's an animal, it's not meant to be in the house, she said, replying to the girls. Kanny. Don't worry little sister, it wouldn't be bad if the triplets had a little friend to play with, she said, looking at the little fox. Shinobu. But Nissan, animals are meant to live in the forest, not in a house, she said, somewhat frightened of the fox since she didn't like furry animals. Neho. Let's go, please, she said pleadingly. Kanny. Shinobu, what if we leave him in the yard and he just plays with the girls? She said smiling. But the fox woke up, looking around in confusion. Kanny. Oh, you woke up, little one, she said, picking up the little fox and giving it a hug, only this time placing it on her chest. Giyuu. What the heck, since when have I been here? I only remember being in the tree. He thought, shocked. Kanny. What's wrong? She said, looking at the little fox. Giyuu was nervous. He had never been so close to anyone and didn't want to be, so he discreetly used a little of his strength to free himself from the hug. And when I managed to identify where he was and he started running to the entrance of the farm, the girls started chasing him. The three of them. Don't escape, little fox. They said, chasing the fox who managed to get out. Kanny. I'll go get the fox, the girls deserve a friend, she said running, and Shinobu didn't have time to say anything to her. She went outside and saw the fox running into the woods, so she followed it so she could catch it and take it back to the farm. He ran for a while and saw the fox stay in a kind of lake that was in the middle of the forest. She was going to approach carefully until she saw the fox transform into Giyuu. Giyuu. I must be more careful when I hide, he said, panting from running in his base form while looking at his reflection in the water. Meanwhile, Kani, remembering how she hugged that fox who turned out to be Giyuu, blushed intensely upon learning what happened. Giyuu. I must be more careful when I fall asleep, he said calmly, releasing his blue fox tails and ears. Kani. To Tomioka-san. She said, shocked to see Giyuu, and he, startled, jumped like a cat and fell into the water. Kani. Tomioka. She said worriedly when she saw him fall into the lake. Giyuu, using his Kitsune power, lifted the water of the lake, holding it in the air while he remained in the hole, but still wet. Giyuu. Why is this happening to me? He said sighing, turning to look at Kani. Giyuu. It's just you, Kocho, he said calmly, stepping out of the hole and letting the water fall so it wouldn't stay in the air. Kani. What do you mean it's just me? Do I not matter? She said sadly. Giyuu. Well, I'm actually glad it's just you, because if it had been someone other than you or Sabito, I'd already be in trouble, he said calmly, his ears and hair wet and his tails on the ground from the water. Kani. Oh, well, were you the fox the girls brought? She said curiously. Giyuu. Yes, I need to be more careful where I stay to sleep, he said, sighing somewhat tiredly. Kani. So I practically hugged you? She said, blushing deeply. Giyuu. Yes, sorry for what happened, but I was just asleep and suddenly I was on your estate, he said calmly, thinking of a way to dry off. Kani. It's okay, Tomioka-san, everything's fine. It was my fault for not recognizing you, but what were you doing nearby? Did I worry you? She said, looking at Giyuu, who didn't change his serious expression. Giyuu. Don't get things mixed up, remember that I was in charge of watching you and Sabito, so that you don't tell anything, he said calmly. Kani. Oh, I understand, she said, somewhat saddened to learn that he didn't care. Giyuu, through his instincts, noticed Kani's sadness and felt bad for causing it. So, using her Kitsune power, she began to play with the water in front of Kani, who was fascinated. Giyuu started by creating some jumping water rabbits, then some dolphins, and finally sharks that went towards Kani, who was a little scared, but they stopped. Giyuu saw Kani's expression of fear and amazement. Giyuu. He laughed a little, he missed making those kinds of jokes when he was little. Well, Kani was shocked, impressed by what Giyuu did and a little scared, but she saw Giyuu let out a soft laugh and she was more surprised than before, but she puffed out her cheeks, causing a pout. Kani. Moo isn't funny, she said with a pout. Giyuu. Sorry, but it's in the nature of Kitsunes to make jokes, he said laughing a little. Kani. What jokes? And why didn't you make those jokes when you were infiltrating? She said curiously. Giyuu. Remember that I was out for revenge, so I forgot about the jokes, he said calmly, remembering those times when he used to make jokes like that with his sister. Kani. I understand, thank you for everything, she said, leaving Giyuu confused. Giyuu. Thanks, why, Kocho? He said, looking at her, confused. Kani. I couldn't thank you for saving me from Upper Moon too, thank you for giving me that chance to live, she said smiling. Giyuu. You're welcome, although it was good that I healed you before your condition worsened, he said calmly. Kani. What? She said, confused. Giyuu. If they tried to heal you normally you would already be dead since your lungs were frozen, I used my Kitsune aura to heal you and keep you alive, he said calmly, surprising Kani. Kani. Thank you so much, Tomioka-san, I really appreciate it, she said happily. Giyuu. You're welcome, Kocho, but go back to your estate or they'll get suspicious about why you're taking so long, he said calmly, still playing with the water, but remembering his sister caused him to become nervous. Kani. Ara. Who is she? She said curiously. Giyuu. It was Ni-san, he said, sounding sad about losing his sister. Kani. Oh, sorry for asking, she said somewhat embarrassed. Giyuu. No pa, he said nothing upon sensing the presence of another pillar nearby and stopped playing with the water and transformed into a normal fox, standing a little further away from Kani who was confused until Tsunemi Shinazagawa, the wind pillar, arrived. Tsunemi. Kani. What are you doing here? He said, looking at Kani, someone he loved. Kani. Nothing, just getting some fresh air in the forest and I came across this little fox, she said, pointing at Giyuu, who mentally screamed. Giyuu. Why are you involving me? He thought somewhat nervously. Tsunemi. I see they say foxes are very smelly, he said, looking at Giyuu who had a vein on his forehead. Giyuu. A little joke wouldn't be bad, he thought, smiling maliciously and ran toward Tsunemi, who didn't care until the fox jumped and was on his head, covering his eyes. Tsunemi. "Get off me you bucking animal," he said, trying to get rid of the fox who was Giyuu, who started scratching him a little, making Tsunemi walk away trying to get him off. But he didn't count on falling into the lake and Giyuu falling from his head to the grass. "Giyuu? Grr," he grunted a little. "Panny? PFF she burst out laughing as she saw how Giyuu played that prank on Tsunemi. Tsunemi stormed out, looking for the fox that was hiding in a tree branch. "Tsunemi? Where is that bucking fox?" he said angrily. "Panny? Ha 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 ha, calm down, ha 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 ha," she laughed non-stop. Tsunemi left, angry at that little animal, and then Giyuu came out of his hiding place, returning to his normal form. "Giyuu? I still have the touch," he said calmly, laughing a little. "Panny? Oh god, I won't deny that it was a good joke," she said, stopping laughing. "Giyuu? Well, I still have to keep an eye on you and Sabito," he said calmly. "Panny? What if you come to the butterfly farm? I've already found you out and it wouldn't be bad if you came," she said calmly. "Giyuu? I can't, Kocho, I have to watch them from afar," he said calmly. "Panny? I understand, thanks anyway for making my day so good," she said, smiling happily. "Giyuu? You're welcome, Kocho," he said calmly, turning back into a normal fox, and Kanny saw Giyuu stretch and yawn a little. Panny saw him as very cute and couldn't help it. "Panny? Come on, come to the farm," she said, hugging him without realizing that she had put him against her chest again. The poor little fox wanted to free himself from Kanny's grip, but she kept hugging him. "Panny? Come on, nothing bad is going to happen," she said very cheerfully. Giyuu, who could speak in that fox form, said. "Giyuu? Oh okay, but stop hugging me, I can't breathe," he said nervously, and Kanny noticed and blushed because she had just realized where he was. "Panny? I'm sorry," she said, somewhat embarrassed by what she did. "Giyuu? It's okay, I'll go to the estate, but please don't arouse any suspicion," she said calmly, still walking in her fox form. "Panny? Oh okay," she said, still blushing. They both walked to the farm, and Kanny grabbed Giyuu. "Giyuu? Why did you grab me?" he said curiously. "Panny? It's always not to raise suspicions. If they see an animal following me like this, it would be strange, it would be more like trapping you," she said calmly. "Giyuu? That makes sense," he said sleepily and instinctively fell asleep in Kanny's arms. When she noticed Giyuu asleep, she began to wonder why she felt so warm when she saw the real Giyuu. It was very pleasant, as if she didn't want to be separated from him. "Panny? I really like being with him," thought red-faced as she watched the sleeping fox. "When I arrived at his farm I saw that a good long time had passed since I had been away and everyone was asleep. She was tired too and went to her room with Giyuu in her arms. When she entered, she just changed into a sleeping yukata and left Giyuu on a cushion to rest. But the warmth she felt while with Giyuu, she wanted to feel it again, so she lay down on her futon, grabbed that little fox, and hugged it, falling asleep. But well, it seems that human has grown fond of Giyuu, but I won't let you keep him, human, I will be Giyuu's mate," said a wind kitsune watching from afar as she hugged Giyuu in fox form. "Soon Giyuu, you will be my male and I your female, and together we will bring very beautiful kitsunes," said the wind kitsune, looking at the moon. This was Hayami, a wind kitsune who always spent time with Giyuu since they were little. "Hayami? Giyuu, I swear you will be mine," he said to disappear. Chapter 8. 1 year had passed since Giyuu was assigned to watch over Kanny and Sabito. Panny's Pav. "It's been a long time since Tomioka-san visited me, and honestly, that worries me because I don't want to imagine if something bad happened to him. I don't know why I say that he's a kitsune, and not just any kitsune, but a supreme kitsune. It took me a while to understand what that was, but it's very similar to us pillars, only there he's more like the alpha. The one who protects his entire race, who guides them on the right path, and who chooses his successor based on the tales and wisdom they can provide to future generations. But that's not all. Tomioka-san told me that they also protect nature, like the forests, and prevent bad disasters, although it makes me sad to know that Giyuu can't guide anyone, being the last water kitsune. Although I also discovered some things that caught my attention, such as how a kitsune has a partner. I'm surprised that male kitsunes have to mark female kitsunes with a mark that unites them as a sign of sealing, but that's not the case. It's been a long time since I've seen Tomioka-san. Well, actually, it's been a month or two since I last saw him, and I really miss him. Whenever I can, I sleep with him when he's in his little fox form because it's like hugging the softest thing in the world. But another time, when I was very tired and wasn't going to make it to the estate on time, I was originally going to sleep in the cold night air, but he arrived and used his tails, about 4 of them as a mattress, 1 as a pillow, and the other 4 as blankets. They were so comfortable that I couldn't help but hug one of them like a plushie and sleep as long as possible. When I woke up that day, Tomioka-san let me sleep on his tails when I couldn't go to my estate. Of course, it was a lie that I couldn't go to an inn because I wanted to feel their tails, which were very comfortable, and I asked if I could pet them, and he told me there was no problem. But now that I think about it, I really like being with him. I constantly feel happy and very safe by his side. I don't know, but I think I do like it. It's very different from when he pretended to be human, but I don't know if a human and a kitsune can be together. I'm afraid I can't be by his side because I won't live long as a kitsune, but what am I saying? I don't care what happens, I want him, I really want him, and I say I love him. I don't care if I can't be by his side, being by his side is enough for me. So I'm going to look for him at the field where we always meet to talk. I want to be with him no matter what. End of Kanie's POV. Kocho was now walking at high speed to the place where she met Giyuu, but she wanted to give him a little surprise to make the moment special. She hid in the bushes to scare him, but when she saw him and was about to come out, she saw something that shocked her. It was Giyuu, but accompanied by an earth element kitsune, but the most shocking thing was that they were kissing. The kitsune had 6 tails, her hair was loose, semi-blonde, and she had a good figure. She was beautiful, and Giyuu and she were kissing. She was Fuji, an earth kitsune whom Giyuu met thanks to Gaia, the supreme earth kitsune, and they got along very well, and now they were in their moment. Fuji. Giyuu, said the girl, kissing Giyuu again, who returned the kiss given to him by the earth kitsune. Both were unaware of Kocho's presence, who was shedding tears while a pain in her chest became apparent. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. The one I loved was kissing another kitsune, and they seemed very happy because they didn't leave each other's side. Annie. It hurts a lot, she thought, letting out tears. I didn't know whether to smile or cry. She knew she wouldn't be able to be with Giyuu because they were different races. She should be happy to see that Giyuu had a partner, but she couldn't. She was simply fed up with being the one who does good for others and not being able to be selfish for a moment. She knew now that she couldn't. The world was cruel, never fair, and she had seen it many times. First, how she lost her parents and was left alone with her little sister Shinobu. Then, how she pretended to be okay but cried whenever she could. And now, seeing the one she loved kissing someone else. It seemed the world didn't want her to be selfish so it could think of her. I could only spy on what was happening to that couple as tears streamed from their eyes. Fuji. Giyuu-sama, when can we have puppies? He said, somewhat panting from the kisses they shared. Giyuu. Calm down, Fuji, you know I love you, but we have to wait until we're ready, he said calmly, hugging her. Fuji. I understand, Giyuu, but will we always be together? She said, pressing her head to Giyuu's chest. Giyuu. I promise, Fuji, I swear we will be, because I will always protect you, he said, stroking her head. Annie. Why not me? Why can't I be there? Why can't I be happy for a moment? Why should I think of others and not be selfish and think of myself? She thought, crying silently as she watched the couple. She couldn't bear it and just left there crying. As she walked, sadness and negative emotions overwhelmed her. She couldn't be happy, but even so she forced a smile so as not to worry her sisters. It was only for them that she was still alive. She would say that Giyuu was one of them, but she didn't know anymore if that was true, because even though she loved him and they could only be good friends, it hurt her heart to see him with someone else. Time skip 4 months. During that time, Kanye was trying to forget Giyuu or try to forget what she felt for him, but it was impossible. Everything she felt for him couldn't go away, and it was still there, and that feeling was stronger. But she just kept talking animatedly with Giyuu instead. Right now she was waiting for Giyuu for their typical friendly chat, but he wasn't arriving. A good while passed and he still hadn't arrived. She thought he might be busy, but then she heard footsteps and saw him. He was badly hurt and crying. He was very sad, but didn't know why he was in that state. Annie. Giyuu, what happened? She said, worried about her friend and platonic love. Giyuu. Damned, he killed her, he said crying. Annie. What happened? Tell me. She said, worried about him. Giyuu. Muzan killed Fuji, he said crying and badly hurt. Being a kitsune did not make him invincible. He was just like any other living being, he could get tired and hurt. Annie was shocked by what Giyuu said and didn't know what to do. The main thing was to heal him because he was badly injured. Chapter 9. Annie was sad to see Giyuu crying over the death of his beloved, but she couldn't do anything since death was something that couldn't be avoided. She knew well that despite everything we do, death will always come to us. But at least I wanted to help him with his wounds. Annie. Giyuu, turn into a normal fox. I'll take you to the butterfly estate to heal you, she said, worried about him. Tomioka remained silent and simply transformed into a fox. Annie took Giyuu, who was in his fox form, to the butterfly estate to heal him. Once there, she began to heal him, but she noticed that Tomioka wasn't waving his tail. When that happened, it meant he was normal, but if it was droopy, it meant he was sad, and she felt bad for not being able to cheer him up. Annie. Giyuu, don't be sad, everything will get better, she said, petting the little fox who was still sad. Giyuu. He said nothing, his gaze was lost, still in his fox form. Annie simply hugged him and went to sleep with him. It was nighttime, and neither of them were in the best frame of mind to have a conversation, especially Giyuu, since he had fought against Muzan to save his beloved. Giyuu. I'm weak, I was going to die because of one carelessness, because of you, Fuji, because you defended me, because, thought the fox, badly hurt, as he began to feel sleepy with tears in his eyes. Annie had fallen asleep, and Giyuu didn't want to bother her with his problems, so he left. But something peculiar was happening in Kocho's dream. She was in a field where there were many flowers, trees, and life of all kinds. She gazed at the landscape in amazement, for she had never seen a place so full of life for a long time. She had only seen her farm, its courtyard, and villages with demons, but nothing more. And seeing a place like that was very relaxing, so she just walked peacefully, but a little brown fox in the shape of a soul was flying by, and Kanny watched it with interest until it spoke. Your emotions are real, make him happy, said the soul of a female voice that Kanny recognized, as it was Giyuu's former partner. The soul entered Kanny, who understood nothing until. Kanny. She let out a small scream because of what had happened and she was awake. She didn't understand what was happening. She thought it was just her imagination and got up to go to the bathroom and saw that she had ears and tails. She was shocked and about to scream, but she held back and touched her ears somewhat carefully, noticing that they were real as she didn't understand what was happening, how she was supposed to process that. Annie. What? It's impossible that a demon caused this to me, but I can't be a kitsune either, I'm human. She thought worriedly and went to her room and saw that Giyuu was not there. She didn't know what to do, but Shinobu came in. Shinobu. Ni-san, breakfast she didn't finish when she saw her sister with ears and tails. Shinobu. Ni-san, what happened to you? She said, worried about Kanny, who had to lie. Kanny. Well, what happened is that I think I was affected by a demon's technique, but it will pass, she said somewhat nervously. Shinobu. Oh okay, she said nervously upon seeing her sister. Annie knew she had to ask Giyuu about it since it wasn't normal but fair enough. Raven. Caw pillar meeting caw, he yelled, and Kanny was cursing in her mind because of it since she didn't want them to see her like that. But she had to go, otherwise it would be disrespectful, so she got ready with difficulty because the queues kept moving. At this moment she wished she knew how to hide it. Annie. I hope today's meeting isn't awkward, she thought, somewhat worried because she really didn't know what to do, but. Annie. Hey Crow, can you tell me that because of a demon technique I won't be able to go? She asked calmly, and the crow nodded and flew off to the master's estate to say that Kanny would not be present. She then left there in search of Giyuu, but before leaving she fell asleep again. She was in that space again and saw the kitsune. It was Fuji the kitsune there, who was calm. Fuji. We're finally reunited, Kanny Kocho, she said, smiling at Kanny, who looked confused. Kanny. Huh. Where am I? She said worriedly because she really didn't understand anything. Fuji. Don't worry Kanny, my name is Fuji, Earth Kitsune. If you're wondering what happened, I just reincarnated as you, he said smiling, and Kanny was shocked. Kanny. What do you mean, reincarnate in me? She said, shocked, looking at Fuji. Fuji. You see, I died from Muzan Kibutsuji because he wanted to kill the kitsunes so they wouldn't be a threat, she said seriously, and Kanny was shocked. Kanny. But where did you get me? Serious food. Fuji. Yes, he helped me, he used everything he had at his disposal to make sure I was okay, but even so, Giyuu and I were distracted by some things, and he managed to hurt us and kill me, she said seriously, and Kanny felt sad about what happened to Fuji, but. Fuji. But the thing is, a kitsune cannot reincarnate unless that person has the same feelings for the other, he said, looking at Kanny, who was very surprised. Kanny. Like, same feelings? She said, seeing that she was smiling a lot. Fuji. The feeling you have of love for Giyuu made him reincarnate in you. Now you will be a kitsune, you will have the skills and abilities of one, but of course this will be if you accept Kanny, he said, looking at Kanny, who was really considering it but didn't want to abandon her humanity. Fuji. There will be something you'll have to take your turn at because my leader and yours will meet someday, he said, and Kanny woke up, looking at everything, somewhat confused. She no longer had the tails and knew that they would only be there if she accepted to be one, but what did he mean by her leader? Meanwhile, elsewhere the meeting ended and right now the boss was with his wife watching Yasaka. Kagaya. So there will be an agreement to kill him? He said calmly. Yasaka. Yes, one day I will bring the 5 Supreme Kitsune so that the alliance is complete. Without further ado, I will take my leave, she said, leaving with her guards. Kagaya. Soon it will all be over, he said smiling. Chapter 10. 2 months had passed during which Kanny hadn't seen Giyuu because he was busy with meetings with Yasaka. But then he received Kanny's letter about how he hid his tails, which surprised him, but he replied normally, saying it was just a matter of relaxing and concentrating. If it was that simple, then hiding the tails wasn't a big deal, although Giyuu did find it strange, but he didn't pay it any mind, thinking it was just Kane's curiosity. While she had managed to remain calm and hide her tails and ears from the other pillars and continue her work now that she was a kitsune. She didn't know that those instincts would bring her many complications, like having an enhanced sense of smell. Her ears could hear from long distances. She had to say that she discovered a few little secrets about her younger sister and the other girls. Her instincts for danger were always present, which is why she improved on her missions, and this was noticed by the boss, who congratulated her on her improvement as a pillar. Right now they were all in a meeting of pillars, waiting calmly for the boss, because he told them that there was something very important to announce. Everyone was serious about that, because if the boss said that, it could be either something bad or something good. Many were talking amongst themselves until he finally arrived and they all knelt down, bowing to the master, who had a smile on his face. Kaguya. Good afternoon, my children, he said, smiling at those who were there. Everyone. Good afternoon, Oyakata-sama, we hope you are in good health, they said in a respectful tone to their superior, who smiled at that. Kaguya. Thank you for your good wishes, my children, but I think it's time to start the meeting, he said, a little more serious than before, and everyone else was the same. Kaguya. You see, the hunter's level has been dropping lately, and even if we train them, we have little chance of winning against Muzan's demons, he said, surprising everyone, but they had to admit it was true. Haijiro. So, Oyakata-sama, what should we do? He said, not quite understanding what they could do since they didn't want to be left behind. Kaguya. That's what I'm getting at, I've forged an alliance with another species that we've been hunting by mistake for years, he said, shocking the rest even more. Tsunemi. What do you mean, a race that was hunted by mistake? We've only killed demons. He said, somewhat angry about it. Jayame. Calm down, Shinazagawa Oyakata-sama, please tell us what's going on, he said, intrigued. Kaguya. You know, demons were once thought to be myths, and now they're real, but kitsunes were also myths, and now they're real too, he said seriously, surprising everyone present who couldn't believe what he said. Yuzui. I apologize for interrupting, Oyakata-sama, but even if you say so, it's very difficult to believe, he said seriously, but suddenly the sky and clouds began to change to a more violent tone. Kaguya. They're coming, he said seriously, surprising the pillars, who didn't know what their leader was referring to and instinctively went inside to protect their leader above all else. Suddenly, tornadoes began to appear in the area, shocking everyone who saw the elements that formed them. The tornado was made of intense fire that kept generating overwhelming heat in the area. The other was a very powerful wind tornado that even flew heavy stones and cut them instantly. Then there was another one that was surrounded by very powerful rays that shot out in some directions at random around the place, making everyone nervous. Another was a dust devil that lifted all the earth from the place, also lifting stones, but it was generating life around the place, surprising everyone. And finally, despite the low humidity of the place, a very powerful water tornado appeared that emerged from the ground, generating a heavy rain in the place. The pillars were quite nervous because they didn't know what was happening and why suddenly 5 natural phenomena occurred at that moment right on the boss's farm until a tornado of light appeared. Many didn't know what to say about that until figures began to emerge from the whirlpools, or rather, kitsunes. Tsukiko. Are these the pillars? They don't look strong, said the female voice of the supreme kitsune of fire, Tsukiko. This surprised everyone present to see a woman with foxtails and ears present before them, but the next to disappear was the whirlwind, revealing the supreme kitsune of the wind, Shiryu. Shiryu. Ha, how surprising, I've never seen so many humans together, he said, looking at the hunters who were still in shock. The next whirlpool to disappear was the one of lightning, revealing the supreme kitsune of lightning, Raijin. Raijin. It's a surprise, to be honest, but I don't really care, said the lightning element kitsune, looking at the pillars who were still in shock, the other one to disappear being the earth element one. Showing another brown-haired figure being the supreme kitsune of earth, Gaia. Gaia. It seems very nice to see the lives here, she said with a very sweet smile, looking at the pillars. Although the second to last to disappear was the whirlpool, this one surprised all the pillars except Kani and Sabito, who saw who was the kitsune of the water element, the one who calms the waters, whose liquid attacks are as strong as rocks, demonstrating that his calmness can be a danger to his enemy, the supreme kitsune of water, Giyuu Tomioka. Everyone was shocked, even Amain, who informed Kaguya, who was also shocked by it. He said nothing about what he saw and just stared at the pillars, who couldn't believe it. But from the last one came the most powerful of the kitsunes, Yusaka. Yusaka. It's good to see you again, Kaguya-sen. I see you've brought your strongest warriors too, she said with a smile as the 5 supreme kitsunes knelt before her. Kaguya. I'm also glad to see you, Yusaka-san, and yes, my children, the pillars, are here, he said with a warm smile to the kitsune. Yusaka. Well, here I present to you my children the 5 Supreme Kitsunes, please introduce yourselves, she said smiling. The 5. At your service Yusaka-sama, said the 5 standing in front of their leader. Tsukiko. Well, I am Tsukiko, I am the Supreme Kitsune of Fire, she said, generating flames in her hands. Shiryu. I am Shiryu, the Supreme Kitsune of Wind, he said calmly, generating strong winds. Raijin. I am Raijin, the Supreme Kitsune of Lightning, he said, generating electricity around him. Gaia. I am Gaia, the Supreme Kitsune of the Earth, she said, looking mainly at Kani, who was nervous at the sight of her. Giyuu. Tomioka Giyuu, Supreme Kitsune of Water, he said seriously, looking at the pillars. Gaia. It's a pleasure to meet you all, although it's a surprise to see you, Giyuu, he said, surprised to have Tomioka there in front of him. Giyuu. He couldn't say anything because he was a little nervous about what was happening. Raijin. So these were your companions during your infiltration mission, Giyuu, to be honest, they seem pretty strong, he said disinterestedly, looking at the pillars. Misaka. Calm down Raijin, she said, looking at the Supreme Kitsune of Lightning. Raijin. My apologies Yusaka-sama, he said with a bow. Gaia. Yusaka-sama, may I do something? She said with a serious tone in her voice, looking at Kani. Misaka. If it's not bad, it's fine, she said calmly, and Gaia suddenly grabbed Kani with her tails, who was shocked by it, and Gaia pulled her towards her. Gaia. Name, she said with a serious tone in her voice. Kani. Kakani ko Kocho, she said nervously, looking at the Supreme Kitsune of the Earth. Tsunemi. Leave her alone, you damn woman. He said almost in an angry shout, but was silenced by chains of water. Giyuu. I won't let you talk about Gaia-san like that, he said with his Kitsune power activated. The wind pillar was somewhat frightened by the fact that a spray of water was pointed at his throat, and Gaia was looking seriously at Kani. Gaia. How strange, I recognize Earth Kitsune, how come you're an Earth Kitsune? She said, shocking everyone present. Kani, being very, very nervous, was scared and lost her composure, showing her tails and ears, shocking everyone. Giyuu. What? He said, shocked, as were the other Kitsunes. Gaia. Kitsune art soul of the reincarnated Kitsune said, using his aura to quickly see and begin to show Fuji's soul. Fuji. Huh. Gaia-sama, it's an honor to see you again, said the soul of Tomioka's former female, who was also shocked. Gaia. Hello Fuji, tell me one thing, did you decide to reincarnate as this human hunter? She said seriously, looking at Fuji. Fuji. If Gaia-sama, I died because of the demon Muzan and this human, by sharing something that I also have, is my reincarnation, said the soul that was still attached to Kani, who couldn't believe what she was seeing. Tsukiko. It's a bit strange, she said, looking at the Kitsune. Tsunemi. Hey, what did you do to him? He said, shocked and angry. Shiryu. The thing is, humans, Kitsunes also reincarnate as humans if they share strong feelings for something, even though they are just one being, he said seriously, looking at Fuji. Isaka. Kaguya-san, we need to talk seriously about this, but afterwards we're only here to sign an alliance between the hunters and Kitsunes, so we can defeat Muzan and his demons, she said seriously. Kaguya. I understand Yusaka-san, we gladly accept this alliance, he said seriously. Isaka. Okay, now I need Tomioka and Gaia to stay, she said seriously, and the other 3 Kitsunes nodded to leave. Kaguya. Everyone else, leave too, he said seriously. They all nodded and left, still shocked. Chapter 11. Right now, Tomioka was quite confused about what was happening, because at that moment his former mate had reincarnated into his partner Kani Kocho. Well, in front of him was what appeared to be the soul of Fuji, who was smiling happily at that moment while its tails moved. At the same time, Kani's tails and ears suddenly appeared, moving in the same way. Kaguya. Well Yusaka-san, please tell me how this is possible, he said seriously while his wife Amain stood beside him, calmly watching everything. Shiryu. Show some respect to Yusaka-sama, you insolent human. He said seriously as he released some of his power, while Amain was nervous about what might happen to her and her husband, but. Isaka. Kitsune Shiryu, show respect to Kaguya-san as well. Both he and I deserve respect, for he is the leader of the hunters we are going to help, she said as her power nullified Shiryu's power, who was trembling because at that moment his leader was angry, and he knew that if she was angry, it was impossible to get out alive. Shiryu. My apologies Yusaka-sama, he said while Yusaka just sighed at that moment. Yusaka. Well now, Kaguya-san, the topic of Kitsune reincarnation depends quite a bit, actually. It depends on emotions, let's say love. There are Kitsune who die without being able to be with their mate, but because of their desire to be with her, they reincarnate into someone who has the same emotions for that mate. Of course, there are 3 types of reincarnation. The first is where the reincarnated soul takes control of the body, forming a Kitsune and retaining its memories. The second is where the soul rests in peace, leaving behind the memories of the reincarnated individual, who then makes all the decisions. And the last is where both souls merge, becoming a single being, she said seriously, surprising Kani, who didn't know what to say at that moment. Kani? Wait, in my case, what was it? She asked, confused. Human, the thing is, you have to talk to Fuji's soul to see which one it will be and make the pact because a soul cannot claim without the consent of the other soul, she said. Well, Kani just looked at Fuji, who was smiling at that moment. Kagaya. I see, he said, analyzing things. Isaka. Well, the thing is that Fuji reincarnated as the huntress, but the process will take quite a while because she's doubting something and they have to sort that out, she said. Well, everyone nodded. Tsukiko. Oh god, sometimes I wonder why we reincarnate as mere humans, they are the weakest species, she said angrily. Raijin. Silence, Akiko, he said seriously, generating lightning in his hands. Tsukiko. Oh, you want to fight? She said, releasing fire from her tails, which was quite intense, but. Isaka. You all behave yourselves, I will not allow this behavior in my presence, she said seriously. Both Kitsunes clicked their tongues at that moment while looking away. Giyuu. We must retreat, he said seriously while the Supreme Kitsunes got angry, or well, only two of them, and the others just nodded. Kagaya. Well, rest at the butterfly estate if you wish, we must establish good bonds between everyone, he said, smiling as everyone left, although Kani was taken to the butterfly estate by Gaia. Of course, I took another route to talk to her. Gaia. Tell me one thing, Hunter, she said seriously, looking at Kani. Kani? Why yes, she asked nervously. Gaia. Why are you doubting your emotions now? She asked, looking at Kani, who was looking down because at that moment she didn't know whether to say that she loved Giyuu. She had spent so much time with him, but seeing him with Fuji broke her. She didn't know whether to accept it, she didn't know if it was right to love him now that Fuji was dead. Kani? I just don't know, I feel like it's not right, she said with somewhat empty eyes. Fuji. Kani, you should know that a Kitsune's love is eternal, but that doesn't mean he can't love another. Even after I died, he still loved me, but he still harbors feelings for you, she said, shocking Kani. Kani? What do you mean? She asked, confused at that moment. Fuji. When Kitsunes love, we can know each other's emotions through a mark, and I saw that he is happy with you, he is happy to be with you because you were a human who made him change from that dream of revenge, she said, while Kani was confused. Kani? You mean when he wanted to kill us? She asked. That's right, Giyuu always suffers from the loss of his sister. She was one of the last water Kitsunes and had great potential to become a supreme Kitsune, but one of her hunters killed her. From that day on, Giyuu shut down his emotions to everyone, and when he was with you, he was happy, and with Fuji too, she said seriously while Kani just nodded. Fuji. I reincarnated in you so that you can make Giyuu happy. He has more feelings for you, and the same for me, but you should know that he just needs help, she said while Kani was looking at Fuji's soul. Kani. But I thought you were going to want to take my body, she said, looking at Fuji. Fuji. I want you to decide everything, be however you want to be with Giyuu, you just have to stay calm, she said smiling. It's up to you now, Kani Kocho, it's up to you, she said as they went to the estate. Now Kani was thinking at that moment. What should I do? Chapter 12. It's been a few days since the Supreme Kitsunes and the hunters formed a small alliance. In that short span of time, some Kitsune of different elements arrived at the hunters' headquarters, although of course these were of fire, wind, lightning, and earth. But the only water Kitsune was Tomioka himself, who was currently meditating on a mountain while water droplets floated around him. Some animals in the area began to approach, for the supreme water Kitsune exuded immense peace. His mere presence, which was not aggressive, drew all living beings closer, and although some were predators of others, they simply did not attack each other. They simply approached the floating water droplets, beginning to drink a little, each one taking water, which did not bother Tomioka, who was now opening his eyes, noticing all the animals with a very slight smile, for he only brought a little more water, since he was hydrating several animals, along with others that were still approaching that part. Giyuu simply remained still controlling the water so that the animals could drink peacefully. After some time, Tomioka himself was walking down the mountain, although some of the animals that were there were following Tomioka, who, noticing this, was smiling. The Kitsunes, although a race that could exert great pressure on the environment, among other things, were able to transmit peace and tranquility to all living beings on Earth, allowing them to live together peacefully, without the need to fight among themselves. Giyuu. Return to your places, please, said Tomioka, looking at the animals that just began to separate, going to different places, while Giyuu just watched that and transformed into a fox the size of a normal person, starting to run towards the hunter headquarters. This time it was his turn to train some Kitsune and hunters so that they would be better adapted to high-risk situations, since the Kitsune were currently the closest thing to facing a demon, as they had different abilities along with great physical capacity, surpassing humans and equaling demons in almost every way. Once at headquarters, he went to the boss's estate, who was currently in a meeting talking with Yasaka, who was standing with his tails and ears out, while Lemane was watching everything, very curious to be honest. Lemane. Let me see if I understand, you can have superior or inferior power depending on the number of tails you have, right? Asked the Ubayashiki wife, looking at the Kitsune who simply nodded at her words while looking at the Ubayashiki family, although noticing the curiosity that the younger ones had at that moment. Kaguya. I have a question. Is there a way for hunters to gain abilities like those of Kitsune? Something similar to what the flower pillar, Kocho, had, who is now a Kitsune, according to Lady Gaia, he said, looking straight ahead, as he couldn't see anything at the moment, though the Kitsune was pondering this. Nothing like that was ever tried, because Kitsune simply didn't talk to humans or interact with them much, since very few had the confidence to go with them, and well, an example of this was that hunters killed many Kitsunes. And that's good, the last water Kitsune was the Tomioka, since he would have to repopulate everything with just one female or several, depending on what the Tomioka decides at that moment now. But giving humans abilities to be similar to Kitsunes was simply impossible. Isaka. I regret to say that it's impossible, Kocho. She's a special case. It was primarily a matter of Kitsunes, and she's now the reincarnation of an earth element Kitsune. But the other hunters can't do anything about it. The only thing we can provide this alliance is warriors and training with the Supreme Kitsune, she said seriously, looking at both of them, who nodded. Although the door made a noise from the other side, indicating that someone had knocked with the intention of getting attention so they would let him in. Kaguya Yasaka. Come in, they both said as the Supreme Kitsune of Water entered, looking seriously at both leaders while kneeling before them. Giyuu. Excuse my sudden appearance, Yasaka-sama and Oyakata-sama, but I've come to ask where the group of hunters I'm supposed to train is, he said seriously and with a tone of respect to both leaders who looked at him attentively and only responded. Kaguya. They're at the Sound Pillar's estate, they were being given sword training, and well, it's your turn to go and make them train, he said, looking at Tomioka, who simply nodded at his words and was enveloped in a whirlpool of water to suddenly disappear from there. Sound Farm. The large group of hunters could be seen running under the gaze of the Pillar of Sound, who was now very serious, though noticing something. The Kitsunes there seemed to be waiting for someone, though I noticed how they suddenly stood up and knelt down out of nowhere, confusing several people in the area, although. Suddenly a whirlpool of water appeared, revealing Tomioka, who was serious, showing his 9 tails in motion as he watched everything. Kitsunes. It's a pleasure to see you, Tomioka-sama, shouted all the Kitsunes present together, surprising the hunters by the great respect they had for Tomioka. He was simply looking at everyone seriously before turning his gaze to the Pillar of Sound, who was wearing a big smile. Tenjin. Well, that was quite an extravagant entrance. He said as he approached, clapping his hands a few times, though instinctively he leaped into the air as 2 Earth Kitsunes didn't hesitate to attack him, though. I drew my swords while in the air. A Kitsune of Fire Element was preparing a few fireballs at the tips of its 5 tails currently. Fire Kitsune. Speak with more respect to Tomioka-sama, human. He shouted, launching his 5 fire spheres against the Sound Pillar, who now didn't know what to do, although out of nowhere. Chains of water trapped Yuzui, who was surprised and was taken out of range of the fire spheres, which then fell to the ground, although they were eliminated when a huge sphere of water caught them and simply made them disappear. Giyuu. Fire Kitsune, what were you trying to do? He asked, unleashing some murderous instinct not only against that Kitsune, but also against the 2 Earth Kitsune who were the first to attack and who now fell to the ground due to the pressure that Tomioka was exerting. They were now witnessing the fury of a Supreme Kitsune. Giyuu. I remind you that we are all allies now. Both Pillars and Supreme Kitsunes are of a higher rank than you and deserve the same respect, he said coldly. Now the fury of Tomioka was about to be seen. Chapter 13. Giyuu. Tomioka, the Supreme Water Kitsune, could be seen staring down the Kitsune who had previously attacked Tenjin Yuzui, the Sound Pillar. The Kitsune now looked in terror at Tomioka, who was exerting considerable pressure, while his 9 tails moved so slowly that it frightened those present. The hunters, for their part, were happy not to have attacked Tomioka. The training of the Pillars had always been something that frightened them, and now they saw the abysmal difference that existed at that moment. Well, are you going to take responsibility for your actions? He asked seriously, looking at the Kitsune who already understood what he meant and stood up, showing off their tails as much as possible. Their fur bristled with fear, but their eyes were like those of hunters searching for the best way to catch their prey, which was no easy task. Before them, the Supreme Kitsune of the water was so calm it was frightening. His posture, well it didn't seem like one of battle, was because they were watching how Giyuu seemed to have covered all their weak points. The first to attack was the Fire Kitsune, who took advantage of the fact that the wind was blowing strongly in the area. Kitsune Fire Art, Third Tail. Volcano Eruption. He shouted as his hand sank into the earth, and out of nowhere a tremor so strong was heard that a huge amount of fire came out of the ground, causing everyone around to be shocked. It was like seeing a huge explosion, and it could be seen how this fire that came out went directly to where Tomioka was, who was calm. Weak, he said as his hand was raised at that moment, so that out of nowhere a wall of water was raised, and Giyuu moved away from that part, everyone seeing how there was practically a lot of fog forming now, or rather smoke, as the fire impacted against the wall of water. The hunters weren't able to see anything, but the kitsunes who were watching were listening and starting to smell. They could more or less imagine what was happening, and few of them were able to see what was going on. Through the smoke, the fire kitsune could be seen trying to locate the supreme kitsune, but he couldn't see anything. His eyesight wasn't very sharp. He ducked down, perking up to see three blue tails suddenly attack like spears. A few of the fire kitsune's hairs were cut as he was shocked. Looking in the direction of the attack, he noticed Giyuu standing in front of him, about to kick him, but… Earth Kitsune Art, Third Tail. Mother Earth's Nest. The two Earth Kitsunes suddenly shouted as a kind of stone dome began to form around the fire kitsune who was about to be struck, were it not for the fact that the earth managed to lessen the impact. Because at the moment of the kick, Tomioka was able to pass through the attack, as if it were nothing, managing to hit it, but with less power at that instant. His gaze now focused on the Earth Kitsune who were on all fours, ready to attack at that moment, combined. Kitsune Earth Art, First Tail. Mountain Charge. Was the cry as parts of their bodies were covered by stones very well reinforced by the energy they were providing, and they were running against the Tomioka. Once they achieved the desired speed, they jumped and at that moment simply put their hands in a single fist like a hammer, making a resemblance to a mountain. Tomioka watched this as two of his tails moved beside him, and at that very moment Giyuu said the following. Water Kitsune Art, Fifth Tail. Whirlpool Deflection. He shouted as the water began to form a whirlpool, causing all the fog around the place to disperse. The water increased more and more and trapped both Earth Kitsunes who were trying to reach it, but the water infiltrated the rocks, causing the rocks to slowly detach from the bodies of both Kitsunes. In a desperate attempt, they tried to attract even more rocks and earth to block the water a little, but Tomioka's two tails trapped both Kitsunes until he finally threw them into the air. It didn't stop there, because the water chains reappeared out of nowhere and at that moment pulled both of them down and threw them to the ground at great speed. Fire Kitsune Art, First Tail. Infernal Dragon Egg. The Fire Kitsune shouted, re-entering the battle. Fire engulfed Tomioka, who was inside the dome. He looked around carefully, noticing small spears forming on the walls. Giyuu had to remain calm as small walls of water formed, just enough to deflect the fire spears. He was ready to counterattack, but… Kitsune Wind Art, Second Tail. Palm Impact. The Wind Kitsune suddenly shouted as he used his palm to strike the air and thus generate a wind palm that went against the fire dome, and upon impact, the fire intensified so much that it caused Giyuu to have to defend himself quickly, and in doing so, he generated a lot of water that evaporated on impact. I must say that surprised me, he said as he walked calmly and looked at the Kitsunes who were nervous about it, but Giyuu noticed that there was no Earth and Fire Kitsune there. While searching, and thanks to his sense of smell, he managed to predict where they were. He looked back to see how they were both cooperating and then suddenly said. Combined Kitsune Art, Earth and Fire. Meteorite Impact. They shouted out of nowhere as the earth began to accumulate so much, while very, very strong fire entered the earth already looking like something like lava, and out of nowhere it rose up and at the same time launched the attack. When Giyuu saw this, he could only open his eyes. He heard the Kitsune combining their techniques and creating very good and destructive attacks, and seeing this brought a small smile to the supreme Kitsune of water, who was just beginning to concentrate energy in water, and his 9 tails were moving. Good work, you deserve your current ranks, he said as his eyes began to change, revealing their hunting stance. Kitsune Art of Water, 9th Tail. Ocean Fury, he shouted as everyone stared in shock at the sheer volume of water. Tomioka's tails plunged into the water and glowed so brightly that some covered their eyes to watch Giyuu unleash his tails against a meteorite-like object. The tails were embedded in it, causing it to explode, but the tails were as if nothing had happened at that moment and trapped both Kitsune who were slightly exhausted from using a lot of energy against Tomioka. All the other Kitsune stared in shock at the attack. The hunters were trembling slightly. It should be said the Kitsunes did not actually have defined stances for their attacks. Each one created their own or inherited them from others, such as breathing techniques. Giyuu left the two Kitsunes on the ground and saw the Wind Kitsune and the Earth Kitsune kneeling, simply showing their surrender. Excellent fight. Very extravagant, Tomioka. I didn't know you could fight like that. shouted the sound pillar, who was quite surprised and very, very excited by it. He really liked watching very exciting fights, and seeing attacks like that for the first time made him think about perhaps a new stance. All the Kitsunes were applauding excitedly at the display of power shown by the Supreme Kitsune of Water. Meanwhile, the Supreme Kitsune of the Earth Gaia could be seen with Kanae. She was looking at Kocho, analyzing everything, from the energy and the tales that she had at that moment. "And you're going to personally train me to understand this new side I have?" Kocho asked, looking at Gaia, who proceeded to touch Kanae's ears and tails while analyzing her. "Not quite. Well, we Kitsunes do train, we are the ones who have to develop our own techniques for our fights, despite being peaceful," she said, looking at Kanae and slowly shaking her head. "Unfortunately, I can't do much. You have to start making your contract with Fuji. If you don't reach an agreement, it's almost impossible for you to develop properly. Let me know in the comments below if you guys want the next part. Also check out my other video that has been shown in left. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like and share this video. And have a fantastic day. Bye.